Kelly Carnahan from Ask Resource Center, and I will be facilitating this webinar along with a few of my other colleagues here. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar titled 4333 Graduation Requirements. The presenter today is Pam Wolber, the Transition Coordinator for Ask Resource Center.
I'm the post-secondary coordinator for Ask Resource Center. My lived experience personally that brings me to this role is that I'm a mother to 5, and all of my kiddos have had some learning disabilities and have needed to work through that post-secondary transition. My daughter Toria was the first one that I helped work through that, and she now is 27 and she is currently receiving adult services. And so I guess just to let you know, if you're a parent, that for me it did not end in terms of helping to advocate for her, that type of thing. It's been an ongoing process. Lexi is my senior, and we're in the trenches right now of transition planning. And then Evie and Charlie are coming up. Last week, I was able to go to kind of a career academy opportunity for Evie to kind of start that process for her. Professionally, I have a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation, and I worked for 22 years as a transition coach and family and educator coordinator for Northwest AEA. So I had lots of opportunities to work with families, students, and educators around this topic of post-secondary transition. So we're going to talk about 4333, which is graduation requirements. So before the fall of 2018, students had the option to graduate based upon IEP goals. And the IEP team would kind of make that determination. So that's what their graduation requirements were. In 2018, the Iowa State Board of Education updated the state special education rules concerning the graduation of individuals eligible for special education and the definition of a regular high school diploma. So it is a fairly recent change. And so that is why that's why this webinar is to kind of go through what it looks like for students that have an IEP. So Iowa has some minimum graduation requirements, and these requirements are for all students and all. It's for kiddos that have IEPs. It's for students that are even gifted and talented. And so Iowa has set up these requirements, and they're referred to as 4333 or 4333. So what does that mean? So the requirements are that all students should have 4 years of English language arts, 3 years of math, 3 years of social studies, 3 years of science, and then the completion of a local school district's physical education expectations. So each local school districts set their graduation requirements. And each local school district may have additional graduation requirements up and above this 4333. School districts can decide what that looks like. For example, a district may require specific classes, such as in the area of math. They may require that a student take 1 year of algebra, 1 year of geometry, 1 year of calculus for the math requirements. Another school district may just say 1 year of algebra, and then it's the student's choice for the next 3 years. CPR might be something that's a requirement. Maybe a school has decided that a student should take a fine arts or a foreign language. And then the school district determines how many electives needs to be taken in order to receive a high school diploma. So the first important step that I would take, or I have taken as a parent, is to know what the district graduation requirements and policies are for your district. So put into chat, where do you think you can find your district's graduation requirements? To find them, where would you look?
Looks like we have somebody saying website. Someone else says guidance officer on their website. Another under the district tab on the website. So it looks like a lot of people are saying you should be able to find those on school websites. In policies. Has anyone experienced having the IEP team talk about having those requirements? There we go. Someone said I would go to a recent IEP and look at that part of the IEP. Someone else said a school handbook. Nicole answered yes. So that must have been to my question, Nicole, that would anyone look to their IEP team to find those? Great. So it seems like, Pam, we have a lot of people who say website, some say guidance counselor's office, policies, and IEP teams. Is there
Yep.
anywhere else they could look, Pam?
So what I did is I went and took a look. My first step was to go to the website, and then I looked in the handbook that was on the website. And this is where I found for my kids what their graduation requirements were. So I took a screenshot to just show an example of what that could look like. And then I just wanted to kind of review this and show where I see the 4333 in this. So um, and yes, I just wanted to also say that going to your IEP team or to your special education teacher is a wonderful way to find it as well. So in order to take a look at the 433 in this, is that one credit equals one semester hour of classes with a passing grade. And so each year that student is going to potentially receive 2 credits for each class. So here in this school district, you have English 1, English 2, English 3, and English 4. And so that there will take care of that English requirement. Here for math, you have algebra 1 or 2 or 1 to 3, and that algebra is required. And so what this means is they have algebra that a student can accomplish in 2 semesters, or a student can take algebra that they can get accomplished in 3 semesters. So then a student would be able to choose out of the options what their other 1.5 or 2 years of math would look like. In science, we have integrated physical science, biology are 2 that are required, and then the other one can be a science elective. In physical education, the requirement here is 4 credits and then 1 per year. In social studies, these are the options: world history, American history, and government. And then the student would take 18 electives. And so if you look up and find something that looks like this and kind of run through it, you'll be able to identify kind of how within this what the 4333 looks like. So graduation options for students with IEPs. In order to get a diploma, the student meets all state and district graduation requirements, the 4333, and is not eligible for 4+ services because they don't have an unmet transition need, or they meet all state and district graduation requirements, the 4333, and is eligible for 4+ services, but they choose not to participate at any point, or the student meets all the state and district graduation requirements and completes the 4+ services. So in order to get a high school diploma, they must meet all of the graduation requirements of the district and of the state. So there is a potential option for a certificate. So to receive a certificate of completion or attendance, there are no standard state requirements. District requirements are determined by district policy. Students could be eligible for 4+ services if they have unmet transition needs, and a student chooses not to continue with 4+ services and has not completed the graduation requirements, 4333. In this case, a certificate of a completion or attendance could be given. So another key thing to remember and to know is that it is the local school district who decides. They decide whether or not a certificate of attendance or completion is offered. And they also are the ones that decide if the student's IEP team can create an alternate path to a diploma. Those decisions are decided by the school board. So walking at the graduation ceremony. So whether a student receives a diploma or a certificate, the child is still allowed to walk the stage with their class, with their graduating class. So how does this impact students with an individual education plan or program? One of the first things that I wanted to point out in terms of the impact is this statement is taken directly out of the Iowa Department of Education document. The IEP team's responsibility beginning in the 8th grade is to develop a pathway to 4333 and ultimately a high school diploma. It is essential that Iowa academic standards are addressed. The path to graduation can be customized to meet each student's specific needs and goals as long as it fulfills the minimum graduation requirements of the Iowa Department of Education. So when I talk about that, it's essential that the Iowa academic standards are addressed. Is that Iowa wants all pathways that are created beyond the 4333 to a high school diploma to be relevant and to be rigorous. That is a standard that they have, taking the individual's needs into account. A local school district may provide a certificate of completion or attendance to those students receiving special education services who do not complete the graduation requirements. But this is not equivalent to a diploma and does not end the student's eligibility for IEP services. Students who receive an IEP service may continue until age 21 as long as the student has unmet transition needs and are deemed eligible. So as an eighth grader, it's really important to focus on working towards a diploma, to not at the very beginning of the student's high school career to focus, say, hey, we're just going to work towards a certificate, because it is way easier to switch to a certificate down the road later if the student is unable to meet those minimum graduation requirements. It's really important to take a look at the students' plans after high school in the areas of living, learning, and working. Those would be those post-secondary expectations. So identifying what they need to do to prepare to reach their goals. It's really important to remember that most community employment opportunities require that high school diploma. So now we're going to talk about the course of study as it is laid out in the IEP through Achieve. We're just going to go here. This is the IEP that we have, and we're going to scroll down past the summaries of working skills. We get here, this is where the needs and concerns are. And then there's this section here, other information essential for the development of this IEP. And this is where you will find that on the IEP, where it starts talking about that course of study. So when a student has an alternate pathway to a diploma, or if things are going to look a little bit different, this is where you're going to find that information. So course of study, one of the very first things in the course of study that a team needs to consider is whether or not a student is going to graduate with a high school diploma or a certificate. So there's a prompt, and that makes it so that the team gets prompted to have a discussion around that. So diploma versus certificate discussion. Some consideration for this discussion, some things that the IEP should take into consideration is that in those early years, your eighth or ninth grader, it's just really important to focus on working towards a diploma, getting creative to see what that might look like. And this is for all students, even students with significant needs could potentially have an opportunity to work towards a diploma. And then remembering it is easier to switch to a certificate later if the student is unable to meet the minimum graduation requirements. The Iowa Department of Education requires school districts to have an individual career and academic plan, an ICAP, for each student in grades 8 through 12. My experience has been that sometimes students with special needs or significant special needs, this ICAP is kind of brushed over a little bit, but it is definitely a tool that can be used to help with that graduation plan going forward. And I've said this before, and I just really want to really emphasize it, is that it is important to note that most community employment opportunities require that high school diploma and don't recognize a certificate. And in adult services, the requirement is that they are competitively employed. And so whatever really can be done to work on that diploma is the most beneficial for a student. So then the next thing on the IEP is the total number of credits that is required for graduation, and this is set by the local school district. And then there's this here that credits earned to take towards graduation. And so what we're looking for here is that if you have a senior and that senior needs 38 credits to graduate, and then here they have 17 that they've already gotten. There's a huge gap here between this 38. And so discussions around credit recovery, discussions around what is it going to look like for the student to receive or to earn a high school diploma, um, really needs to happen within that IEP team so that we can bridge that gap and stay on top of what it is going to take for the student to graduate. And then now we're down to this comment section. And this comment section, you would make note of the conversation that you had around like credit recovery, around what that might look like. Another place or another thing that would go in this comment section would be any alternate paths to a diploma that the IEP team has decided upon. And it's that IEP team that can make those decisions. And remember, they can make that decision if the school board has said that they can, or have given them the okay to do that. And so here's where you would document what those alternate plans would look like. So some ideas of possible pathway changes that could be considered. This is not an all-exclusive list. IEP teams can get creative, and knowing what the student's needs are, what the student's strengths are, can put together a plan that would meet the qualifications for high school graduation. So a school can create a specific course that is listed in the handbook, and this course meets the academic need of the student who maybe needs a more basic math class, and then that could be their math credit. Work experience opportunities can be given as an elective credit. The DLM, Dynamic Learning Path Standards, can be used to create credits. The total number of credits needed to graduate could be lowered by a few. And a student struggling with the class could take a course on a computer program like in Mentum and then receive some specially designed instruction from a special education teacher to help them get through and to earn that credit. I just wanted to highlight or point out that there's a website, Transition Iowa website, that's full of resources and information. And this too will house this webinar. And we also have an info sheet on 4+ services. And as I was presenting, I realized that there were some questions. And so we'll take some time now to answer those.
Feel free to put your questions in the chat. Right now, I think we've got a question about whether the PowerPoint slides will be provided, and you will get those in the email with the recording afterwards.
Carol, did you have, oh, go ahead.
A question that came in is, would there ever be a situation where a student could take the same class more than once and earn a credit each time? Hmm.
Hmm.
I am not sure about the answer on that one. I would guess that's maybe up to the district, whether or not they would want to, or they'd be willing to provide a credit for a class taken more than once, but I'm not really sure. I've not heard of that or seen that happen, but could be possible. Pam, do you have any other?
Yeah, I would think that that in that comment section, we would want to see like a rationale as to why that would be beneficial for that individual student's pathway to graduation. It's a creative way to address it. But I think that we would probably want to see that rationale. And then, of course, the school district would have to allow the IEP team to make those changes. So the school board makes that decision first. And then the IEP team would have a discussion around that. And then in that comment section to, talk about the rationale, always keep it in mind that we want to have high expectations for students, and there might be a really good reason that would be beneficial for that student to take it again, but we want to make sure that it really, really adds to their education.
Thank you. Looks like we're also have a question around, transition planning is required by age 14 in Iowa, but what if somebody wanted to start on that a little bit sooner? Pam, do you know, can you get into that section of Achieve any sooner than 14?
I've heard that it can start before the age of 14, like when they're 13, but I don't know the logistics of the system as to whether or not they could get in.
Sure. I do, yeah, I know that we kind of talk about how, it should start as early as it needs to for a student around transition, but yeah, oh, it looks like someone else has given this answer. Yes, you can access Achieve. Great.
Thank you,
Um,
Beth.
yeah, thanks.
And Chris, you're right. So you might have a 13-year-old that the transition portion of the IEP comes up. It's that they're going to turn 14 within the school year. And so you might have an individual that is 13 where they start that transition if they're going to be 14 within that school year. So Sarah, it depends on the district, is what I would say. I know of a district in Northwest Iowa that it is a blanket statement that the school board has allowed the IEP teams to develop alternative paths to a diploma. And that school district has also gone a step further in that all students are going to have an alternative path. So that was what that school district landed on. Ideally, I think that would be the easiest solution for that a school district does that, but it is their decision.
Thanks for that one, Pam. For those who didn't see the chat, that one was asking about if the school board makes these changes on a case-by-case basis or if it's a blanket statement. We also have another question that is, or statement kind of along the lines of, they have a son who turns 14 at the end of the summer, but his IEP isn't up for review until January. So I'm guessing kind of a question along those lines, Pam, is it okay to wait until if their child is already 14, is it okay to wait until their annual review to discuss those transition needs? Or do you think it could be best to ask for an IEP meeting earlier on to start those conversations right at the beginning of the school year after they turn 14?
And so that absolutely, if you wanted to call an or a IEP meeting and start those conversations, yeah, that is something definitely that the IEP team can do. He turns at the end of the summer. Yeah. So in the fall, you could call an IEP team and start having those conversations. If you waited until January, then it would automatically come, the IEP or the transition portion will automatically come up.
Yeah, so that's another preference one, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Another question is, if my child has a course that is in their schedule to implement SDI or specially designed instruction, should this be graded and go towards their graduation requirements?
If my child has a course that is in their schedule.
You know, this is a question we were just talking about as a staff the other day, and we think that that it could. Not all school districts do it that way, but they could. So that's something that you could inquire with the IEP team about, is whether or not your student would receive a credit for the time that they're spending doing their SDI. And I think that it could be a way to earn some of those maybe electives or other class credits that are required for graduation. So definitely something to talk about with the IEP team. It looks like there was also a question that if we had a 15-year-old and haven't really talked about transition yet, you know, is there anything else we should do besides calling an IEP meeting, contact the team to talk about that? And I think, you know, there's lots of activities that can be done around this, but definitely just pulling together with the IEP team. We usually start with assessments. And so if they haven't done any assessments yet, I think that would be a good place to start. Any other thoughts, Pam?
So I was thinking to to get that IEP out and take a really good look at it and see. So I have an almost 15-year-old, so you should have probably had at least one IEP with the new transition information added to it. And so I would take a look at that IEP and see what is there. And I don't know if you were part of 2 weeks ago, I went through the transition components, and that webinar is on YouTube. And if you went kind of through that, I go through all the different components, and you could look at your IEP compared to what I talked about. And then you would have some real good, solid kind of information and guidance on what to do when you contact your team.
Thanks, Pam. We have one more question I see here. Is there a certain grade that has to be maintained to earn credits towards graduation?
So I would say passing, that they would need to have a passing grade. One of the alternatives to that I talked about that can get creative is that students could potentially go and have their grading be pass fail. That is one of the options that could be there if that's something that would help a student with earning those credits.
Thank you. Along with that, you may have to check with your district to know what their consideration of a passing grade is. If that is a D plus, C minus, that would probably just be another question for your district or your IEP team to help make those decisions for you. Do we have any more questions in the that anybody has? Feel free to put them in the chat. We have a few more minutes.
So I don't know, Kelly, this Carol Manning has raised her hand. Do you see that?
I do see that. Carol, if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we would love to answer it for you. Oh, accidental button. I did that earlier as well.
Okay.
Okay, Pam, if you could go to the next slide, we can wrap this up. Yes. Well, sorry, one thing. Somebody did mention Chris mentioned, as a decision maker, be prepared to think about the outcomes you and your child have for living, learning, and working as you start these conversations with your IEP teams in transition and how to help them close that gap. So yes, that is very good advice. Thank you for that. So after watching this webinar, you may have a few questions about your child or your family or your case specifically. If you have those questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly using our contact request form. One of our staff will call you within a day or two to talk to you about these questions directly. And as I have that, sorry, Pam, we have one more question that has come in. If a student doesn't make the credits and they have an IEP, does that make the team talk about services past the age of 18?
And so, yes, there should be lots of discussions around that um, all the way along. And so it should not be kind of like, oh, we're scrambling here at the last few months of school. We're talking about services past the age of 18. There are students that it could be their graduation path and the graduation requirements go past 18 because they need that time to get them accomplished and to take them. They need to take it at a slower pace. Um, that that whole discussion should kind of go all the way through all of the IEPs throughout a student's high school career. It shouldn't like be like a surprise um, at their senior year, I guess is what I want to say. But a student definitely can take up until the age of 21 to meet those graduation requirements if that is what is needed for the student to do that.
Thank you for that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So we would love your feedback. I know we have asked you to do this after each webinar, but these feedback surveys really do help us securing our funding, and we want to ensure we are answering the questions and bringing the resources forward that are the most important to you. So it takes less than 3 minutes to fill this out. The link is in the chat and it will come to you via an email as well. But if you could take the few minutes to fill that out, it really does help us. And then one more slide, Pam. This is our contact information. If you need to get a hold of us, we do have an office in Johnston, Iowa, but it is not always filled with staff as we are out in the community working with families and working across the state. So please, if you want to get a hold of us, use that contact request form that we have provided in the link, or you can use these 2 phone numbers to call and leave a voicemail, providing the information you would like resources around. That is another way if you are not comfortable filling it out or don't have the access to Wi-Fi. Or you can always email us at info@askresources.org. Please follow us on Facebook to keep up to date with all things Ask and all things happening in our world. We will keep you updated. And if you missed any of our webinars from this year, feel free to find us and subscribe on YouTube and keep up to date with all of those webinars. Thank you so much for everyone who attended today and who has attended our webinars throughout this school year. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and learn from us. We hope to see you back. We hope to connect with you in other ways, but if anything else, we hope to see you back next year for our next round of webinars. Thank you all so much and have a great day.